Connection. We're continuing to explore Luke chapter 15 and this story that Jesus told that shows us who the Father is and what his heart is like. Today I want to go back a little bit when said about the Father saw him from a long way off. Like sometimes this story is so full of amazing truths that I keep getting new insights into this amazing story, and this is one of those days. So we're going to back up a little bit. The Father saw him while he was still a long way off, and he was filled with compassion and ran toward him. The truth that I want to bring out here today is this one. The Son's sinfulness had him separated from the Father. Sometimes we have heard it said that our sin separates us from God, which is true, but we think of it from the perspective that God separates us or separates himself from us because of our sin. What we need to understand is, no, it's us separating ourselves from God. It's interesting because in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, it talks about how God reconciled us to himself. God, you see, didn't need to be reconciled to us. It wasn't that Jesus had to do something on the cross to make God look on us with favor. God always looked on us with favor. It was what Jesus did on the cross was to bring us back to God, was to reconcile us to him. And that's what this Father is doing. He's watching for, longing for reconciliation. It's just so important to him. What he's saying is, Son, I've never separated myself from you. I've been willing, and in fact, exactly that's what we see, isn't it? As soon as he sees the Son coming toward home, he runs to him and embraces him. He wants that Son to know, I am not separated from you. You're the one who separated yourself from me. And I think that's just such an important truth, that our sins do not make God pull back from us. It does not make God separate himself from us. You see, the younger son ran away. He went away. He turned away from God and moved away from God. And that's what we do when we are in our sin. Because you see, when we sin, we are walking away from God's truth. We are walking away from the way his kingdom operates. Does that make sense to us? You see, on the Father's farm, there was no opportunity there for these kinds of sins that the Son was going to commit. So the Son had to go somewhere else. He had to leave the Father's presence. He had to walk away from the kingdom, from the estate, to walk in his sin. And that's what you and I do. When we choose to disobey what God has said is best for us, God has said, in my kingdom, this is the way things are. And it's back again to that whole forgiveness thing that we talked about a couple of days ago. That, in God's kingdom, he says, forgiveness, my kingdom is full of forgiveness. And if you choose not to forgive somebody, you can't do that in my kingdom because it doesn't exist in my kingdom. You've got to walk out somewhere where it's okay not to forgive, where there is unforgiveness. And when you walk out there, you've separated yourself away from me. You've pulled yourself out of that cone of forgiveness, if you will, out of that kingdom of forgiveness. And that's what this Son did. He walked away from this kingdom of blessing and joy and celebration and relationship and life to the full. He pulled himself out or walked out of that to go somewhere else, to do things that were not available to him in the kingdom and in the Father's estate. And that's what's happening here. And so in this, the Father is watching for every opportunity that he might have to get you back into his kingdom, because he knows that's where there's fullness of life. He knows that's where there's joy. Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full, or have abundant life. What he's saying is, I've come so that it makes it easy for you. I'm coming to bring you back into the kingdom of the Father, where you will experience these wonderful things. God watches for any chance for reunion. Reunion is his heart. Reunion is his passion. And he wants to make sure that you understand he has not separated himself from you in any way. In fact, he's pursuing you. Oh, that's so good. God doesn't separate himself from us when we sin. No, he comes on the run toward us. He comes looking for us. He comes extending his welcome to us with his open arms to us. He's not. He wants you and I to know. You see, the enemy will tell you that, won't he? When you make a mistake, when you slip up, when you sin in some way, the enemy will say, "Oh, there, see, God's pulled himself away. You've got to try and get back to God. You've got to try and find God again." No, we stop believing those lies of the enemies. God has not separated himself from you. He's pursuing you. He's watching for you for any indication that you're still interested in him and being part of who he is and part of his kingdom and being one of his children and living in that joy and that blessing. That's our God. Our sinfulness does not make God separate himself from us. It simply means we've separated ourselves from God to go and live in the land where we can sin. Good news today. Turn your face back home. He's not turned his back on you. He's watching for you. That's good news. Let's think about it. We'll talk again tomorrow.